we as a society of gays, lesbians, youth, transgender, everything, how we behave to something that gets thrown at us. And I actually had to search hard for this. This is the original Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report of the 5 gay men that were dying of AIDS in Los Angeles.
Oh, they were the first ones talked about in The Band Plays On. I remember. Where
these 5 were mentioned. They went to Dr. Michael Gottlieb, and he said, okay, they don't know each other. They've never slept with each other, but yet out of the 5 of them, one had Hodgkin's and he was doing quite well. So told he was cancer-free. Why is it that all 5 of them had pneumocystis pneumonia, Kaposi sarcoma, cytomegalovirus, had thrush? Something is new going on, and they had to send out to the CDC for requests for pentamidine. Well, if PCP is so rare, why is it happening now in San Francisco and New York? So that's where I'm talking about the fear of, oh my God, what's going on in our community? Because that kind of fear wasn't there with Zika virus. It wasn't there with H1N1 because it was a more global thing. It wasn't targeted to the gay community. Mm-hmm. So I'm doing a comparison because I'm looking at how do we in Lgbytqia community, how do we behave when bad news is thrown at us? Well, let's see. With HIV, we didn't know the virus, that it was a virus until 2 years after it was killing our community. It started reporting, that piece of paper was printed in May 5th of 1981. So they went back and said, has anybody seen patients about this and this and this? It turns out they did from the 70s, but our community wasn't dying from it until 1981. So it was already in the works. So I accept the fact that HIV did what it did because we did not know what caused it. And when we found the virus 2 years later, we still had no treatment. So it was continuing to kill people until the first treatment came out. Now let's get back to COVID. I would say, shame on us as a community, as a society. We knew about COVID before it got here. We knew what we saw on CNN, what it was doing to people, killing people. It's airborne. When we got the first case in Canada and the United States, we should have put masks on immediately. We shouldn't have to be told to do that because we had enough warning. We saw it on TV. We didn't get that chance with HIV.
Okay. Chad, do you think that COVID is part of SARS?
Yes, it's because, well, it's called COVID, what's called SARS-CoV-2. That's the virus that causes COVID-19. SARS-CoV-2 is the HIV thing. COVID-19 is the AIDS result. The virus causes the disease. So when people say I'm getting tested for COVID-19, you're getting tested for the disease that's caused by the SARS-CoV-2 virus. I looked into a lot of these things because I want to know. I have a pre-existing medical condition. I take immunosuppressive drugs to knock down my immune system. I'm the complete opposite of an AIDS patient, but I'm immunosuppressed. If I get that vaccine, which I want to do because I want to protect myself and people I'm surrounded by, am I actually hurting myself by trying to protect myself?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Now, once again,
do I have to kill myself by trying to protect the community? And that's my only fear.
Mm-hmm. Now, can I just ask you again, where do you think this virus came from?
I think it came from Asia. I think it came from, well, they say it came from Wuhan, from the wet market. But I also found out that the viral lab is, 20 miles down the road.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
I don't know if it's me.
I can hear you guys just fine.
I think your mute button is on again, Steph.
Huh?
The mute button, can you hear me?
I can hear you guys fine.
No, it's not me. Okay.
No,
Check your mute.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so what were you saying now? Where do you think the virus came from?
Me? Me or Chadwick?
Chadwick.
I think it came from Southeast Asia, just like swine flu, which got renamed to H1N1.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, like all this conspiracy talk, this guy ate a bat. I thought, wait a second. People have been eating bats for hundreds of years. Why would coronavirus finally start killing us now when it's been done for so long? I think the virus escaped them by accident, and they blamed it on people eating bats, just a cover up. Now, whether it was intentional or an accident, it doesn't matter. The fire is burning, whether it was whether it's arson or was an accident. So now that the virus is here, never mind where it came from. What are we going to do about it? Because here's what it's doing to us. If we don't find a way to stop it, its job is to kill us. Our job is to make sure it doesn't.
And that's the thing is in China, in China, Japan, they immediately started wearing masks right off the bat. It was mandated by both governments.
Mm-hmm.
But what I don't like is the Chinese government concealed the fact that this was going on in their country when it was happening. They knew that people were leaving their country even though they were extremely sick, and leaving their regions even though they were extremely sick. And then when it finally landed in North America, the first thing they did was, like you said, they blamed it on bat soup. But you know what? Those bats are cooked. It's boiled soup.
Exactly.
So
the virus is dead.
Right. So I believe that somebody fucked up in one of their labs.
Yep.
But I also knew that they were prepared for this because they opened a COVID hospital in Shanghai, and then they claimed to have built it in 4 days. You cannot build an 8-level building in 4 days, even if you worked 24 hours around the clock. The foundation on the bottom floor wouldn't have set by then. Like, there are so many things that people are not looking at. And, I'm not racially profiling China. And yeah, the last 4 or 5 major viruses have come out of there. And that is because they do have a horrible pollution issue over there, which does help create viruses. They also don't have the control with their food prep. And I know because I've been there. I had to live at McDonald's the 2 weeks I was there because I just was I was not doing the restaurants. I just could not. I'd walk in and I saw what was going down and I was like, there's rats on the floor. I would fucking leave. Because to what they view as normal is considered faux pas here. If there were rats on your floor in the restaurant in Canada, you would be shut down and humiliated in the media. But there, they just pick them up and they're like, well, more livestock because they live off their land there. They eat, they eat. They
look at the quality of what the lifestyle of different parts of the world. There they eat bats. In Africa, they eat monkeys. They eat all these wild things, and they call it bush meat. Now, viruses coming from those animals, they're alive when the animal is alive. You cut that animal, kill it just like a chicken, and guess what? You get a cut, their blood goes in. Okay, that's the human transmission. Now, when it takes one human being from chopping up meat that's infected with a live virus, and it went into your bloodstream, you go home, have sex with your wife, your girlfriend, your mistress, whatever. Now you can pass it on to the rest of the world.
And there's also the world GRD scale that we need to look at. So last year, prior to COVID, China accounted for 8% of the international financial GRD. Now they are at 25%. They have capitalized on this virus because they're the ones that are building all the masks. They're the ones that are building all the PPE suits and selling them to other countries. And so this is why I'm really thankful that Trump didn't get in for a second term, because I think had Trump got in for a second term, he would have bombed China, even if people told him not to do it. And any Asian country that sends bombs over to the United States, they come over Canada first. So I was more than, when he was fighting with North Korea and all that. But it's not about him fighting with John Yoo Kim or whatever, but it is important to realize that people need to not look at this as a reason to penalize China as a country. This is not, the racism that has come out of, this is exactly like SARS, severe Asian racism syndrome. And, this is not, the violence that's happening to third and fourth generation, like Canadians who are of Chinese descent. And, like I had, my coworker had to take a leave of absence. His father, who has mental health issues, actually assaulted a 92-year-old Chinese guy in a store during the first wave. And so he took leave because the embarrassment that came from the newspapers, even though he's estranged from his father, he was still getting threatening messages on Facebook for his father doing this racial act. So it's really brought a lot of people out in favor of, racially colonizing Asian people in North America. And that's not what this is about. If you want to say the lab where it came from in Wuhan needs to be shut down, or we're going to bomb that lab, fine, bomb that lab. It probably has been responsible for the last 4 major viruses that have gotten out. And, so bomb it. But the conversation that we're having today, and we're talking about China, and we're saying, we don't necessarily think it, the bad soup thing is a really horrible, it's a microaggressive like Asian explanation, and it was only sensationalized by Trump calling it the China flu, the China virus, the Wuhan virus, whatever. He never, ever called it its legitimate scientific name. And so these are the things that increased incidents of racism, not just in the United States, but in Canada.
Yep.
And so it's important for us to realize that, like, we cannot hold the entire Chinese population responsible for COVID. It's just, it's insane. It's like, when Hitler held all the Jews responsible for, the suffering of poor people in Germany, even though they had worked really hard for what they had. It's the same sort of thing. And I'm sure people in China are just as concerned about their well-being as we are in North America. I mean, they have to send their kids to school. They have to go to work. They have to walk on the streets. They don't know if the person beside them on the public transit has it. They're going through the exact same things that we are going through. And it's, governments as a whole, like the only people that I found held, really, really took accountability for the betterment of their countries during this was the Prime Minister of New Zealand. She shut her country down, right down. She took heat right, left, and center. She gave zero fucks about what her constituents said. She said, "You voted me in to run this country. I'm running this country. I'm listening to our medical health professionals," and they literally maybe had like. They literally had like maybe 1% of all the cases, and they've had no positive tests since then because they shut everything down. And same with Japan. Japan has had a low sort of like, they had one area where there was an excessive amount of tests. They wouldn't let people out of that area, and they masked everybody else around the country, and it finally stopped. And now in the lower mainland, in Vancouver, which is connected to Richmond, and Richmond is famous because that's where most people who've immigrated from China live. Out of all of the cities in the lower mainland, in the Vancouver surrounding area, Richmond has the lowest amount of tests. So people who are saying that it's Asian people's responsibility, well, how come Richmond has the lowest amount of tests out of all the lower mainland? And that is because they, as a community, went, we don't want this. It's going to bring a lot of damage. They started masking up in Richmond immediately. The mayor was encouraging it. They did everything. And yes, they have had tests, but nothing like Abbotsford, BC, and nothing like Vancouver. And so so I think it's, it's important for us to realize that this isn't about us attacking Chinese people or saying that they're responsible for what's happening, but rather to remove the stigma of where this virus came from, because now that